All right, welcome into week 7 of college football. We are down a man. Kevin is out this week, so it's just your boys Seth and Steve S squared back in the house. It's been a while. We got a bunch of big matchups. This might be the biggest week of college football, so stick around. We got a bunch coming your way. Let's get into it.
Give a damn about a hater when I feel like it. Not today, not today, not today, not tomorrow. Get out my way, please. I'm trying to get paid. Not today.
All right, Steve, we are officially into week 7. What is that? Is that exactly halfway, technically? Right?
I don't want to think about it.
Is okay. Fair enough.
It's going too fast.
It is. It really is. It really is going by fast. Let's get right into it. ASU, Utah. We're talking Friday Night Lights. These Friday Night Light games, I don't remember them being this memorable. They're really stacking that Friday card. There's been a lot of really, really good games. This one, I think, is still a pretty good game. An old Pac-12 matchup. So excited to represent there. This is at ASU, so in our backyard here. What's your initial thoughts here? These are again a Big 12 matchup, but really two teams that are very familiar with each other.
Yeah, listen, I don't want to sound crazy here, but this game has all the makings of an upset. Look, Isaac Wilson, starting quarterback for the Utah Utes, he isn't bad, right? He's a 4-star recruit, but when you look at the team stats in weeks 1 and 2, where Cam Rising started versus weeks 3 through 5, they had a bye week last week, where Wilson did. It's pretty obvious what's happening here. Utah's EPA on passing plays is down 66%. Their passing plays explosiveness is down 33%. And this all seems to be affecting the run game because Micah Bernard cannot get it going as much as he used to be able to. And their EPA on a rushing plays is down a whopping 61%. So this offense is just struggling through and through, both in the air and in the ground, but when Cam was in versus when Cam is out. Now, on ASU sides, Kenny Dillingham has this team absolutely ready to play. They have a higher overall offensive EPA and success rate, and they're stronger in both the pass and the run. And so when you kind of break this down, in the rush, they are absolutely smoking Utah. Their EPA per rush is 0.3 versus Utah's 0.08. And Cameron Scadaboo is the best running back that we're not talking about. And listen, as an Arizona alum, I want nothing more than to discredit ASU every chance I get. But you got to face the facts. You got to face the numbers here. Their rushing success is 23% higher than Utah's is. And then you look at Sam Levitt getting it done through the air for ASU. Their EPA per pass is 0.32 compared to Utah's 0.19. Now, listen, when we think about Utah football, we're thinking about Utah's defense, and that is where they do have an advantage. But if you look there, ASU is no slouch either, right? And so for me, I'm really concerned here because statistically speaking, Utah hasn't faced an offense as efficient as ASU's, and their offense is actually more efficient than Arizona's, right? A team they just lost to. So, you put in two good defenses who are, pretty fine there with an offense that is clearly leaps and bounds better than Utah that you have it with ASU. I think the 5.5 is a bargain, quite frankly. And I think the upset alert is absolutely on in back-to-back games for Utah. Now, this is not my off the numbers pick. We're going to talk about a different game because I feel morally obligated to pick one. But if I didn't have that game already picked, this would be my pick of the week and my upset.
Huh. Okay. I agree with a lot of what you said. I agree with all the numbers there. Obviously, those are pretty objective. Market is buying Utah here, 6.5, open at 5.5. And to me, it's the question around Cam Rising, right? What are you going to get? You talked about some of the splits. This team has looked very different under Cam Rising, and there's just secrets around this. They're coming off a bye. It's still unclear who we're going to get at quarterback there for Utah. The one thing I will point out that you touched on a little bit is they are equal on some of the ball, but I would say Utah definitely has a strength in the defense. We're looking at the 5th overall weighted EPA defense in our data set and the 6th overall points per equal in our database. So this is a team in Utah that isn't allowing a lot of points once teams drive on them. And I wonder if that is enough to slow this ASU team down and maybe why the market is buying a bit. So I don't know. I think you're going to see this number kind of jump all over the place with Cam Rising either in or out. And it's kind of been like that week in and week out where this huge question, and it looks like he's worth anywhere from 3 to 5 points, depending on the week. So it's a big swing. So if you feel like there's no way Cam Rising is going to be in there, this is probably the best spot you're going to get to bet ASU, because that number is only going to come down if he's not going to be playing. I don't really have an opinion here. I do kind of agree with you. I just wonder if Utah is equipped to slow ASU's offense down. And then what do we get, right? Because if they can slow the pass down, and it's just kind of an on the ground gauntlet game, they're just kind of throwing haymakers. I don't know. You kind of want to favor the better team, but again, I think that all is also around having Cam in the game. If Cam Rising is playing, I think that adds a little bit more dynamic for Utah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what you're saying, but I have the same question in the reverse though, because if ASU can kind of slow down Utah's offense or Utah's passing game specifically, I mean, we've already seen the hit come in their running game, and I think ASU is just absolutely equipped for a ground and pound slugfight. I think it actually plays into their advantage, and so we'll see. But you're absolutely right. I mean, the numbers don't lie. Cam Rising's contribution to this team's offense, their efficiency, and their explosiveness, most importantly, cannot be overstated. And so there are definitely points to be had here. Now, I haven't seen much from media days from Kyle Whittingham, but it seemed to be at least early reports showing that Wilson is going to get the start here. But we played this will he, won't he game for 3 weeks now, right? So I don't trust anything so far. To your point about who's going to start this game.
Yeah, is exactly right. So you're taking the points, Arizona plus 6.5 if you had to take a bet in this game?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
100%.
I think I'd either take that or just stay away. I have some concerns that Utah can stop ASU, but 6.5. I forget what it opened at 3.5 or did it open at 5? I can't remember.
That's a great question.
Eric, can we pull that up real quick? Just the graphic here. It should have that on there. There it is. Okay.
Good call.
So open at 3.5 here. So I think what you're seeing is a lot of the fluctuation with Cam now at 6.5, but even our model kind of put it a little bit more in the direction of Utah. I think it's a stay away for me. I
do have one question though. Part of me wonders, and this is just purely philosophical, but we talked about this with Florida State, right? How Florida State went through, they obviously got the transfer portal thing going on, and that's been an absolute collapse of a program. I'm not saying Utah's collapsing, not saying that, but I do wonder, we talk about Florida State living on its brand name, being favored for the first few games of the season, when clearly the building was on fire. Yeah. I wonder, is the Cam Rising effect just kind of buoying this Utah team where we've seen 3 games of Isaac Wilson, and it's just really not the same team? Are they still kind of getting too much respect, do you think?
That's interesting. I mean, I'll tell you, I think it's a really good question. And I think that the reality of modeling it is pretty difficult as well, because you're left with a handful of games with Cam Rising at this new team. You have now more data with him not in the team. So, your kind of modeling instinct is, okay, well, you're going to go and look where games he's played, and you're going to compare that to games he hasn't. And that's how you're going to come up with something of how much he's worth. But the problem is you don't have as much data on how many points he's worth in context of this season in this team. And so you can definitely inflate a number. Now, on the flip side of that, you could also be underestimating his effect as well. So it is tricky here. We've seen it over and over. This season seems to be a little bit more riddled with a kind of 50-50 kind of chance on this, but we've seen in the past that the market tends to overreact on these quarterback moves. And actually, quite frankly, we saw a good example last week. I mean, if you would have polled retail bettors on Clemson, Florida State, this thing opened at 4.5. Then it came out that Uyunglele was going to be injured and it was going to be the backup. There probably wasn't a number big enough that a retail client wouldn't have laid that. But then what did they end up? They ended up only losing by like 16 or something. Right. So you can definitely overreact to these backup quarterbacks, because unlike in the NFL, these rooms can be insanely deep with talent. I mean, in some cases, the backup might be better than the starting quarterback. I'm not saying that's the case for Utah, but it gets tricky here. I don't know. I'm all puts it around 5. I would kind of lean on to where the data puts it. No real bet here. 6.5. I think is, if you're going to want to be an ASU better, I think that's a number to grab. If you want to be a Utah better, I would wait and see if Cam doesn't start, you're going to get a better number.
Yeah. And the last thing I will say about this, kind of to your point about the quarterback room, Yeah, I think there definitely is an overreaction. That's things to look out for because we've seen this phenomenon. So if you guys are familiar with what our kind of game plan is, and we bet openers, right? That's really where
Yeah.
our model shines at for college and NFL. But we've seen this sort of phenomenon this year where we get an opening number, we see this number travel one way or the other, and
Yeah.
then it kind of almost come full circle in some of these cases. And so timing is everything, right? And so if
Yeah.
you're keeping touch on those media days, you keep in touch on those coaches conferences, you're trying to get some information arbitrage to say, hey, who's going to start? If you see an Isaac Wilson being put in there, that it could be an idea to help, hey, go ahead and fire that bet soon before the market catches up. Because you can get, I mean, 3 points is huge, right? I mean, six and a
Yeah.
half to 3.5.
Huge. I mean, to me, this number is basically showing this is Cam starting. To me, this number is an assumption Cam will be the starter here. And so if you don't think that that's true, I would wait to bet that if you want to be a Utah backer. All right. Anything else on this game, Steve?
No, sir.
Okay. Let's head to one of the best
Ooh.
matchups of the year, one of the funnest games of the year, one of the funnest traditions, the Red River rivalry. One of the hardest things to say as well. Texas, Oklahoma. Man, this is always a good game, whether the teams are, capable or, if they're evenly matched. Last year was one of the best games of the season. We're a little bit of a different situation coming into the 2024 season. Texas, I think you would agree, is kind of in that elite tier of college football right now. Oklahoma, although in the SEC as well now, probably in that middle tier, maybe a little bit above average tier, but definitely not as, equal as it was last year. Market open here at 14.5, got as high as 16, now sitting back here at 14.5 for Texas, Oklahoma. I want to run through a couple important stats here. Texas offense, we're looking at the 4th overall pass EPA, 62nd rush EPA for Texas. But OU, their defense, 72nd against the pass, 9th against the rush. But on offense, Oklahoma is definitely not the team they were last year. 99th passing offense, 98th rushing offense. Texas still doing the thing on defense, third overall passing defense, 21st rushing defense. Steve, what is your opinion going to this game? This has this is maybe the biggest rivalry of the year, no matter what matchup, and it comes in the middle of the season. This obviously has playoff implications for Texas. They want to win this game. You could argue they need to win this game.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the triple R, because I'm not going to, butcher Red River rivalry because I can't say that twice. The triple R is one of the most fun games of the year. And if you guys don't understand, again, what we do here is we look at these predictive stats because we look at these stats that we find are predictive in modeling games. And that's the reason we talk about them. So you may not hear other folks talk about expected points added or echo rate or success rate, things like that. The reason we do that is because we know that those have value in predicting the winner, but we want to harp on that. If you have no idea what those things mean and you don't care to learn what those things mean, all you have to do is look at the graphic that's on the screen right now. Pick a category, any category, Texas is better. Texas is going to win this game, right? And so you can see there, we make the model or we make the number at 20 and we got some value on this. But, when I look at this game here, Seth, you really hit it right on the nail there. So you got number 1 Texas coming in, first of all, some respect to their name, but this offense for Oklahoma is really kind of in this identity phase right now. They bench Jackson Arnold. Brent Venables came out in the media session saying they are going to stick with true freshman Michael Hawkins Jr. going into this game. Now, we did see him struggle against Tennessee in his first real action. That was to be expected, I think. I think that's fair. And then you kind of saw him really ramp it up, especially against that Auburn game. He had a PFF grade of 49.9 against Tennessee. That bumped up to 72 against Auburn. So he's finding his way through. Now, Brent Venables did say that he's not going to overcomplicate the calls going into this game. Both of these teams are coming off a bye week, but he's not going to handcuff them either, is what he said. And I think that's really important because Hawkins is such a dynamic runner. I mean, he's been the team's leading rusher the last 2 games, and you need that sort of dynamic playmaking when you don't have that offensive capability, like you already pointed out, Seth. And I do want to call out one thing, right? I mean, we talk about this Oklahoma team that's struggling to throwing the ball there, but remember, their receivers, Deion Burks, out. Jaleel Farouk, out. Andre Anthony, who got hurt in this game last year, out. And then Nick Anderson, starting the year, out. I mean, these are some of their top receivers. They're going to get some of these folks back. Venables did say Burks could be potentially ready for this game, but it sounds like they're really a couple of weeks off. So it doesn't really matter for what's going through here. So I am definitely concerned about Oklahoma on both sides of the ball. And this is one of those games where, we're getting indication that Ewers is going to start. Ewers, man, Quinn, Arch doesn't really matter. I think Texas has a chance to kind of really blow this game out early, and they make Oklahoma one-dimensional. It's going to be trouble.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, full transparency, this is a model play for us. The model loves this pick. Um, yeah, I mean, it's shaping up to be trouble in a lot of different ways, and this is giving a lot of Texas, Michigan week 2 vibes here,
Mhm.
where what's the one thing where you get outsized wins? And it's when really, really, really efficient pass offenses go against teams that are kind of stagnant against the pass and against the rush, because it just is too many ways to beat them. And that's what we're looking at here. We're looking at OU 72nd in stopping the pass. I have a lot of concerns here, but more importantly, how is Oklahoma going to keep up when we're talking about a Red River shootout, as they call it now, or they used to call it? I don't see how the shootout actually happens, right? Because we're talking about the 99th pass and the 98th rush team on Oklahoma. How do they keep up in this game? And you're probably going to be able to see explosive plays from Texas. The other thing you said, Ewers looks to be back. He's been at 3 consecutive practices. Looks like we're headed in a Ewers start, which I think it's I'd rather have that here. I think you want that experience. This is a big game. Seemingly his last triple R. So I mean, I think this is important emotionally, because this is a game that gets bloody. I mean, there's been huge blowouts, and I say that for a reason. I think alts should be on the table here. Our raw model number is 29. And I don't want to get carried away here. It is a rivalry. It is hard, but that edge cuts both ways, right? A rivalry means they are more willing to run up the score here. Now with a spread of 14.5, this isn't the same exact situation as Texas, where you could, I think that spread was less than 7. So, your alts could be at 13.5 and 20.5. I think here a reasonable alt might be around the 18, depending on where this thing closes, and then the 20.5 if you really want to be greedy. I really wouldn't go chase the 27.5, 28s. I think those are pretty low probability outcomes. But again, if you want to be greedy, I kind of support it. The only chance here for me in Oklahoma is that their defense has played well. We're talking about the 4th weighted EPA defense in our database, but Texas is the 6th. So the problem here is we have a good Texas team offensively and defensively. We have some data that Oklahoma might be able to keep up defensively, but offensively, there's no reason to believe that Oklahoma should have a lot of success here. So I don't really know where to put this. If we look at the weighted EPA for offense, Texas is 9th, OU 115th. So they get worse. They're making plays that aren't predictable, that they can use week in and week out. So yeah, alt season's on the table for me. I think I'll probably end up taking a 20.5. We're on a bunch of 14.5. We really like that bet. It'll be interesting to see where this closes. But I think the edge here is just the passing game. So I think you really want to see Ewers in this game. I think this is where you're going to get the kind of outsized blowouts, in my opinion.
Yeah. And can I just end with, what's our favorite season here at BTB Analytics?
Is it alt season?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. You love to see it.
Also fall. Yeah, no, I think this is a good game. I win, lose, or draw. I've said this last week with Tennessee. This one feels good. The math backs it up. Those are kind of really nice situations, whether they win or not.
Mm-hmm.
All right, perfect. We are headed into another insane matchup. Week 7 is just loaded. Ohio State at Oregon. This is kind of going to be an instant classic in my mind. This is kind of a new matchup we haven't seen with the new Big Ten, and I'm here for it. We're obviously talking about, I think the AP poll has Ohio State number 2 now. In our database, they're actually the number 1 team going against an Oregon team that I'm not going to lie, Steve. They've kind of, I don't want to use the word lackluster, because they haven't stumbled, right? They've done what they needed to do. But this is not the Oregon team that I thought I was going to see six games through the season. What about you?
Yeah, same. And we've talked about this Oregon team before earlier in the year about how they really just aren't blowing teams out that they should be blowing out. Now, granted, we're not holding them to that metric, but the teams that they should beat, they really should look really good and really polished. And you don't want to see them making mistakes in week 6 that should have been corrected by week 2. And that's exactly what you're getting with this Oregon team. And I'm not even going to go into the numbers for this one. I'm just going to tell you what the visual eye test showed you. Dylan Gabriel is continuing to make mistakes at key opportunities, but because Oregon is so talented, they can overcome those. I don't know they can do that against the Ohio State team, which by far in any metric is going to be the best team they face this year, especially defensively. You look at that Oregon Michigan State game. Gabriel had 2 interceptions in the end zone in the first half, right? Now, they still ended up scoring 21 points. They kind of got off to a slow start and kind of went from there. But you don't have those kind of opportunities to waste against Ohio State. And one thing I saw was pretty interesting when you look at Gabriel's, sort of pocket presence and his PFF player grades, like he's really good overall, except when he's under pressure, which I think is fair. The problem is Ohio State leads the country in sacks. So is he going to be under duress and forces himself into more of those havoc plays, more of those turnovers, and putting the ball at risk? If he does, Oregon's not good enough to play a sloppy game and still beat Ohio State, and that's my concern here. And that's why, for me, I think Ohio State is the safer play here, even though you can see right there, we show a little bit of edge with Oregon there. It's just if you get your top tier, best of the best, play their best game Oregon team, yes, they absolutely can win this game, no doubt in my mind. I just don't know that you're going to get that because through 6 weeks, we haven't seen them play that way from start to finish.
Yeah. Okay. Let me give you a game script in which I think Ohio State can struggle.
Okay.
If we look here, Ohio State is 8th passing EPA, 4th rushing EPA. The problem here is Oregon is the 11th passing defense, but the 94th rushing defense. In my opinion, Ohio State's going to actually have to run the ball a lot in this game to have success and to win and to, do what you're doing or what you're saying as far as the offensive side of the ball and dominating it. The problem there is Ohio State is 111th in run rate over expected. This team is throwing the ball 8% more than an average team. So I think that their kind of pathway to a victory here is on the ground, and they're not really a team that I don't say they're not capable of that, but that's not their strength. Well, that's not true. They're their 4th best team doing it. So it is a strength of theirs. It's just they're not doing it as much as they are throwing it. So is there enough there? Because to me, that's how they're going to exploit Oregon. It's on the ground. And so is it something that they can pull off? And with the ground game, you eat clock. We've seen it year in and year out. Ohio State versus Michigan. This kind of leads to, usually not blowouts. And so that's, I think, where a 4.5 for Oregon comes in and ends up showing value. Again, we make this number 3. You can get 3.5s in the market. So the early market's kind of agreed with us. There's some value on Oregon, not enough for value for us. We went back and forth betting this. We couldn't get to the exact number. You would really need basically a cheap 4. I think we were looking for like something. I think we needed a 105 or less. We couldn't find it. It's not something we really wanted to chase. I'm with you. It doesn't feel comfortable, but I think that Oregon is the better bet. But from like a, gut check kind of aspect of it, it gets tricky. Both these teams are really good defensively, though. When we're talking about the first overall points per Eckel and the 45th points per Eckel teams for Oregon and OSU. So points are not going to probably be coming a lot in this game, in my opinion. So I look, I can see both ways here. If this gets to 3, make your bet. Sure. You're truly just betting into a coin flip in my assessment. What are you? So what are your thoughts? You would go ahead and lay the points 3.5.
Yeah,
Ohio State.
Yeah, and to your point, if you get this a coin flip game, yeah, I would obviously much rather just lay the, look at the 3s either way in terms of a coin flip game. But I think what concerns me, and I do agree with everything you said, Seth. What concerns me though is just as you laid out that script, we've seen this kind of script go wrong for Ohio State opponents in the sense of looking back to last week against Iowa, where Iowa is another team that comes in with really good defense and specifically pass defense. And Will Howard just kind of ate them up. Now, again, I'm not saying that just because they beat Iowa, they're going to beat Oregon. Oregon's a much better team, a much more complete team than Iowa is. Sure. All I'm saying is there's a script there to beat a pretty good pass defense, and Dylan Gabriel cannot beat himself. That to me is just, that's the one thing I'm very concerned about. But I do agree with your gameplay script, and I can easily see that playing out, though.
Yeah, and with it though, if Oregon has more success offensively than an Iowa team, they are going to account for clock, right? And that's 100%. The big thing. So I don't really disagree with anything you said there, but I think obviously when it comes to Iowa, they just have such a lopsided way of playing that Oregon might have a little bit more. But you're right. I mean, Dylan Gabriel has thrown a lot of interceptions. I mean, I've had a chance to watch 2 of the games, and they are just a really interesting offense. They just kind of stall out really, really easily. Gabriel makes really, really boneheaded mistakes,
Right.
multiple interceptions in the red zone. One was a pick six in the UCLA game. I mean, these mistakes against teams that aren't going to be as good as Ohio State, quite frankly, right? Ohio State, as far as our numbers, is the best defense. So if they're
Yeah.
making those mistakes against, pretty good defenses, what are they going to see from Ohio State? So I can kind of see that game script as well. The other point though is Oregon has improved a
True.
little bit every week, right? They haven't
Yeah.
they didn't come out as world beaters, but they have just kind of incrementally got a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. No horse in the race for me personally on this. I would kind of agree with the model a little bit. I can convince myself though a world where you're saying where Ohio State just ends up being so good. And I will say this: Ohio State is the one team, maybe throw Texas in there, where they've really just done what they're supposed to do. I think they've
Yeah.
covered every game except their opener against Akron, ironically. So they are just chopping wood. They're kind of doing this Kirby Smart thing where like everybody's losing in week 6, not them. Not only did they not lose, they covered. Like they're kind of slowly in the background. They were the number one team coming in, and they have kind of just really handled business, whether it was against good teams or now in the Big Ten. They've also handled business there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's well said.
Yeah, this will be a good game. That's all I know. I'm here for it. I'm hoping for a classic Big Ten, kind of just ground and pound game. But I'm here for whatever they got going. All right, next we're headed to a classic SEC matchup. Ole Miss down in the Bayou there for the LSU Tigers. Current spread on this is 3.5. Open at 2.5. We make this number somewhere around 2. And man, oh man, Steve, this one is interesting. I had to eat my words for the first time. We finally had a chance to bet against Ole Miss, and Ole Miss made me eat a bunch of humble pie. I had second and thirds of that humble pie. I mean, it was a pretty brutal loss there for South Carolina. What are your kind of initial takes looking at this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the ones where this is going to be, you would think at least, the shootout of the week. If that's a new segment we can do, right? You got two of these great
Yeah.
quarterbacks coming in Jackson Dart for Ole Miss and Garrett Nussmeier looking in for LSU. And we've seen a more focused Ole Miss team. I kind of saw something that was pretty interesting. When Ole Miss went up against Kentucky the week beforehand in their media day, you had Lane Kiffin kind of talking all this crap about Hugh Freeze stealing coaches and really not paying attention to the task at hand. And you got this team that went out against Kentucky and really looked distracted. And then to follow it back up, you're right. Then they're unfortunately to us, Lane Kiffin goes into the next week. He's radio silent. Team looks focused. Team looks disciplined, and they bounce back in a major way.
Yeah.
And so, for me, I think it's going to come down to the quarterback play, and that may be a little bit of a lazy analysis. But as a football fan, like that's kind of where my mind goes to is who do you really trust here? Or who do you trust more here between Grant versus Jackson? And you look at the PFF grades, Jackson Dart's the number 2 quarterback in the country. This is a team who is going to move the ball. You can see their run rate over expected, negative 17%. This is an Ole Miss team, or excuse me, negative 6.9%. This is an Ole Miss team that knows they can throw the ball and is good at it. And the same thing with LSU, even mostly so. So for me, it's going to be which defense can essentially stand up somewhat to stop the other offense, or which team's going to have the ball last. For me, this is one that I'm personally staying away from, but you better believe I will be watching.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm in a little bit of disagreement here.
Okay.
I have to change my tune quickly, specifically for this matchup. I do not see a world in which LSU has any success. LSU is the 20th pass offense. Yeah, we talked about Nussmeier doing fairly good. Rush 78th, so they're definitely better throwing the ball. And you talked about it, 17% greater than average throwing the ball. I mean, they're kind of know this is what we're good at, and they try to do it. The problem is Ole Miss is good defensively, 7th against the pass, 41st against the rush. But a reminder, LSU 78th rushing the ball. They're not going to try to rush it, so it doesn't even matter. They're going to shut LSU down throwing the ball, and there's not going to be a lot of options. And the problem here is Ole Miss's points per echo, 4th in the country, 2.5 points per echo. What does that mean? It means that when a team gets to the 40 or better, they're giving up on average 2.5 points. That's less than a field goal. I'm very, very concerned here for LSU. We're talking about the LSU defense, 111th against the pass, 41st against the rush. Ole Miss is going to be able to do whatever they want, however they want it. And I'm not sure if I can get behind half a shootout here where Ole Miss can basically do whatever they want. And I'm not sure how LSU can keep up, because these possessions are not going to be going very easily for LSU. They're going to have to play a lot better than we've seen them play. And we've seen this already against South Carolina. They struggle and are susceptible against good defenses. They had to play like hell in that second half to just get out of there alive. I don't know that Ole Miss is going to let that happen here, and I'm very concerned for LSU. And I think the hot seat's going to get pretty hot down there in the Bayou, because this team is just this 2 years in a row where their defense is an insane liability. Insane. I don't know how they were one of, if not the worst pass defense in the nation last year. They're sitting at 113th right now. I mean, how in the day of NIL are you not solving these problems?
Yeah.
I just don't see it.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And again, I want to call out, if you're new to this podcast, first and foremost, please subscribe. All right. If you like this kind of content, we definitely would appreciate you letting us know by hitting one of those 2 buttons that lets us know to kind of keep going and making stuff like this. But 2, if you're also new here, this is one of the only places on the internet that you will see someone admit that they were wrong and taking facts and changing their belief. And Seth, I am, for one, so proud of you to be able to get on this platform and fight for that. But let me ask you this, though. So the point you just laid out, and I do like your argument there, and I do definitely see a possibility for the exact game plan that you laid out to unfold. Are you convinced enough, though, since it has not hit 3 yet, to take or at the 2.5 to take the Ole Miss laying the points?
But market bought it. It is now at 3.5.
Okay. There you go.
So I don't think 3.5 is big enough. I don't think it's big enough, to be honest.
Okay.
Let's see if I can get our raw numbers here quickly. What would we make? What is this game? This is Ole Miss, LSU. We make the number exactly 2.5. That's our raw number. So I mean, I guess I kind of agree with the market. Like, I just think that there's value. I just think LSU is not going to be able to keep up. And I want to say something. I definitely haven't changed my mind about Ole Miss as a team necessarily, but this game, I don't know. This is not the game to hate on Ole Miss. This is there's no world. I mean, there's a world where anything can happen. That's why they play the game. But the reality here is it's going to be so difficult for LSU to move the ball and to do anything offensively. And it's also going to be equally difficult for their defense to stop anything. This just has blowout kind of written all over it. So I don't know. Pray for them Tigers. What LSU's coach name escapes me. What's his name?
Brian Kelly.
Brian Kelly. I mean, Brian Kelly, though, is his tenure at LSU has been lackluster. Would you not agree?
Yeah, I mean, especially given his expectations coming from Notre Dame and what he was supposed to do. He did have that one. He did beat Alabama, so I know that kind of buoyed him up. But overall, this is definitely
in the same season he lost to Florida State.
Right, right, exactly. So
and had the Heisman.
Yeah, exactly.
And all they needed to do was to have some corners and some safeties. In a world where that's easier than ever to get, he doesn't get that. I mean, and then they're lucky enough to have Nussmeier waiting in the world where he can transfer wherever he wants to go. And what do you still not do? You still can't get safeties and corners. I can go find some right now. You give me 6 months, I can get you some safeties and corners. I don't know. I'm just perplexed by that. Okay, moving on to the last matchup we're going to talk about. This one is sneaky kind of my favorite, and a team that I've just fallen more and more in love with. Penn State, USC, another new Big 12 matchup. We're not used to saying those two names next to each other. This one's going to be quite interesting. This one's in Southern California, so Penn State's got to do the cross the United States trek, which we've seen varying results on. And this, both Ohio State and Penn State having to go west. Penn State, number 4 passing offense, 41st rushing offense. USC, 44th passing offense, 25th rushing offense. Steve, give me your thoughts on this matchup.
This line, if you look at Circa, this line went from 4.5. We got we looked at it was 5, and it kind of got up to 5.5 here. I don't see a world where this doesn't get to at least 6.5, and I don't understand how it couldn't. I mean, make it make sense. I mean, we talk about Penn State. Let's look at the negatives, right? This
Mhm.
is a team that outside of West Virginia, again, unfortunately for us, outside of West Virginia game, they really haven't looked otherworldly, yet here they are sitting at number 4th in the country. And part of me wonders, how much of that contribution is because everybody else lost, right? But when you look at this team year in and year out and look at James Franklin as a coach here, Penn State is perennially a good team. They just have a Michigan and Ohio State problem. Everybody else that they're supposed to beat, they do beat. They don't lose to anyone else that's not named Michigan and Ohio State. And for
Yeah.
me, as much praise as we gave Miller Moss and the USC unit going in, and Danton Lynn and that defense, being better than they were the year before. Talk about not going out and getting your safeties and your defensive backs. This is still a team that has a lot of vulnerabilities, and I think Penn State is there to exploit it.
Yeah.
You look at this, people talk about SC. One of their biggest issues is O-line and protection, and that is absolutely where Penn State is going to feast. And you just look at here, kind of like we talked about with the Texas game, it's almost pick a category, any category. The way the EPA per play on offense is over double of what the SC's is, and their defense is where they hang their hat on. And oh yeah, by the way, their echo rate over expected is a whopping 27.34%. So this is a team that is driving the ball. They're getting into their opponent's territory. They're getting to the points where you would expect points, getting to the 40 or more. And I just don't see a world where SC can really keep up. And I think until you get to 6.5, you gotta slam Penn State. Now, tell me, in the new Big Ten, is that a hot take?
No, it's not a hot take. Market is buying this. You're saying you think it's going to get to 6.5. It's at 5.5 right now. So we got time to move. I think 2 stats are really important to me to support the Penn State kind of angle here. So again, Penn State 4th passing offense, which who would have thought that, and 41st rushing attack here on offense. But this is the interesting thing. If you look at the run rate over expected, this is still a team that is running the ball. The reason I call that out is USC is the 96th rushing defense. They're more susceptible on the ground running the ball. And so you have Penn State that is actually better throwing the ball, but they're leaning into the run. They're playing the Big Ten, the Big Ten kind of brand of football, and they're going to want to do it here. And guess what? They're already doing it. And I think they're going to be able to exploit this USC defense on the ground there. So I think that's the other important thing. The other data point that I thought is really, really interesting for South Carolina, and maybe the kind of landslide begins, starting from last week where we were on Minnesota, but this might be a continuation week in and week out from here on out. This is the opposite of a bend don't break. They have a break don't bend. They're the 19th echo rate over expected, meaning they do really well in not allowing teams to get to the 40 or better. The interesting thing, once teams get to the 40 or better, 111th in points per echo. So once you get to the 40, all bets are off. They're giving up 5 points per echo. This Penn State team, in my opinion, is going to be getting a lot of those echoes, and they're probably going to be paying them off. And so I think this is just a lot for USC. They obviously got dominated last week in a very similar fashion, kind of classic Big Ten. And who's going to be better at these Big Ten matchups than the classic Big Ten teams? And Penn State's definitely one of these ground and pound teams. So I'm aligned here. We're going to talk about it and off the numbers. And Market's kind of agreeing here. I can't remember. What did the model have? I can't remember. Eric, can we pull that back up? I don't remember. I think we do show some value. So we're at 7. It's just that the problem is these key numbers. I went ahead and looked because there were some 4.5s. In order to bet this, you basically need to get a 3.5 for our model to follow the criteria where we would bet. But you can see there are quote unquote points of value. It's just that your recovered probability doesn't get it to a place where you would necessarily want in order to bet it, all the time. Mm-hmm. All right, Steve, anything else to add? Penn State, USC? Is there a world in which USC can win? There has to be, right? There's not a 0 probability. In your mind, sure. What would a USC win look like? UCLA had some success.
That is true. I think you have to look at this team where I think it ends and dies with, or ends and begins with the O-line there. If you can get a clean pocket for Miller Moss to have time to move this ball, have a calculated, methodical offense, keep Penn State's offense on the sideline and your defense off the sideline for most of that game, you've got a chance here, right? I think like that has to be the recipe for it. You can't go blitzkrieg attack style. You got to be clean. You got to play a clean game here, but I just don't see how that happens. Other than Penn State flying to California, lands, earthquake, they go straight up, whatever, natural disaster. They don't play the game and then ends in a tie because it's called off. Those are my two opportunities where USC does not lose this game.
I think USC has a lot to learn from UCLA. They did a lot of tight end in the middle right there. I think that looked like the way to exploit Penn State. And Penn State didn't really have a lot of answers. And Penn State's defense kind of bailed them out of that game by shutting down some big drives by UCLA. But UCLA didn't do them any favors. They went on fourth down twice when they could have taken points. That game could have been even closer. So I think, Miller Moss is capable in my mind to give them some problems. This Penn State team is not the pass defense they were last year, 43rd stopping the pass. I think if you get an A+ game for Miller Moss, you attack the middle of that field and you finish off some of these drives, this could be a lot closer than we think. I mean, the market is basically telling us this is going to be less than a possession. And in my mind, I think that's the kind of game you might see from USC. So I would that's kind of my mind on that. And I that's what I'd be targeting. So anybody doing fantasy or whatever on college, that would be the way I would attack the Penn State defense. All right, Steve. That was all the main matchups. Bunch of good games. This is definitely one of the best seasons. Although I don't know why last week got so much hate. It was one of the craziest weekends of all time. I don't know if you weren't watching, you kind of missed the show. So I'm happy that we're always watching. All right, we're headed into the the college football landscape to kind of talk about some of the winners, losers of week 6. We obviously had a ton of upsets. It was a crazy week. I guess we have the weighted EPA that I uploaded. So not exactly the power rating, but we can get a good idea of where the best offenses and defenses are. You can see there, although Alabama lost last week, still one of the best offenses. One of my favorite teams, Penn State, we just talked about them, one of the best. But man, talk to me a little bit about Indiana. This team is on fire, 5-0 against the spread, 5-0 in their record.
Yeah, I mean, what more can you say there? Can I actually pivot here though? Can I talk about can we talk about God bless America and the military schools? Army and Navy 5-0 for the first time since like World War II, essentially. And both of these teams look absolutely amazing. Shout out to you. You had Army as your off at numbers pick last week, but these two teams legitimately look like they can take on and hold their own essentially against any team in the country. And the last thing I want to say here is Ashton Genty and the Boise State Broncos. The best story that you're really not talking about really anywhere, I think, on mainstream media, but this is kind of one of those guys who didn't want to go anywhere, for NIL, kind of a principle, for my own, I stand by my word kind of guy, and he's absolutely tearing up the game right now. But yeah, the military schools are that was not on my bingo card.
That was not on anybody's bingo card.
Yeah. Oh, and can I say real quick, we talk about this all the time. You're going to see every week, every day, some social media account talking about trends and why you have to always just blindly bet dogs and blindly bet unders. And, this stat has hit, X amount of times over every year. If you don't look at the matchups, right, you really are missing the biggest and most important part of this. The big thing going into this weekend was, again, the military games, that the Navy game. The Navy Air Force has gone under in 10 straight years, hammer the under, move. First of all, those lines are already accounted to, to kind of adjust for what, these teams kind of bring to the table in terms of their style of play. But if you just watch Navy, I mean, Navy has been putting up points every single game and no one wants to talk about it. Yeah, they run the hell out of the ball.
They're the most efficient offense.
Exactly.
Pull it up.
Exactly.
Definitely on no one's bingo card.
Right.
With a new coach.
Yeah, exactly. So, this is one of those times where this is kind of really where we try to add that value for this podcast. If you guys couldn't tell by now, a lot of what we talk about is not just the sort of superficial stats, yards per game, points per game, that kind of stuff you hear other people talk about. We want to go a little bit deeper so you can have that sort of knowledge and be able to look for these things to help you handicap in your own games if you're not using, our model in our database, which you can get at btb-analytics.com. More info is in the description.
Yeah, and you can get this for free. And when you're talking about going deep, weighted EPA is maybe one of the deepest things you can go. This takes EPA, which is a play-by-play metric that is very predictive, but then accounts for plays that are more predictive of winning and covering. So this is as predictive and as deep as you can get. Yeah, the Army Navy game. I was looking into this because it's the last game. It's the Week 14 game. It's kind of I always forget, like, oh man, that would be interesting to go to. My father-in-law was in the Army, so I'm like, oh, okay, I'll look. What do you think the cheapest ticket to go to the Army Navy game is? And by the way, it's at the Washington Commander Stadium, so a lot of seats.
Oh man, $400.
$900. $900. So I don't know if I'm going to be going this year, but I was like, what the heck? Like, I guess everybody wants to go to the Army Navy game this year. I was quite interested, but yeah, I don't know. Interesting team. Just to bring it back to Indiana real quick, because I think this is a team that's on fire, a team that just looks like they can't be stopped. They're going to get into a little bit more of the difficult Big Ten schedule, so I don't think that playoff is a realistic thing for them. But this is a team that can make noise, and do they upset a team or two? I don't know. They look like they definitely could. They are definitely going out there. Another really improved team in my assessment is Nebraska. Again, not another team that's going to be able to make the playoff, but is a team that when we looked at where they were last year, about basically the same defensively, but on the opposite side of the graph offensively. So they made a lot of improvements there. And I think Rule is just getting more and more momentum. Nebraska is going to be a sneaky favorite, probably not even sneaky. They're going to be in the playoff conversation. Tennessee, talk to me about Tennessee. A lot of hype coming into last week. Went down to Arkansas, 14-point favorites. Market agreed with us. I think you can only pretty much say they shit the bed, and there was some concerns there about their offense that was supposed to be next level.
Right. And you've heard us talk about this where, yes, listen, Nico Maliava is a great quarterback and he's going to have all these things and everyone is pretty much, on the sack there. But it was Tennessee's defense that was really smothering and putting the Tennessee offense into great positions to succeed. Sure. And when you have this sort of rock fight game, this sort of low scoring affair where you needed the offense to make a play or two to really pull themselves away, we really didn't see that. And I like that you call that out because it really talks to the parity that's in college football. And I think this is great for the league. It wasn't good for us last week, unfortunately, because we were on Tennessee. But I think overall, it's great for the sport. And one other SEC team I want to talk about real quick, because as the great Coach Saban said, it's hard playing in the SEC except in Vanderbilt. Vandy knocking off Alabama. And not just that they knocked off Alabama, if we can pull back up the EPA landscape there, if you look at this Vanderbilt team, they're in the quadrant of elite, right? Yeah. That's that top right quadrant where this offense is pretty damn good and the defense is really above, just right there above average. So crazier things have happened, and I'm here for anarchy and I'm here for chaos.
Yeah, and Vandy gave Mizzou a hard time.
Yes, they did.
You know what I mean? So this is starting to become a trend, and we'll talk about them a little bit later in the show. I mean, this is going to be an interesting week because these teams, they have to bounce back. Tennessee, right, in my opinion, doesn't get a cakewalk with Florida coming to town, and Alabama is playing South Carolina. I mean, both those teams are good SEC teams. Now, we may put them in the middle of the SEC, but this is still the SEC. And Tennessee and Alabama are acutely aware of what can happen any given night in the SEC, right? So, I think that, it'll be interesting to see how both those teams kind of bounce back. I'm really curious to see what we're going to get out of Tennessee because, it was supposed to be like, oh, we haven't seen anything yet out of their offense. Like, this is when, like, we're just going to, light it up and, all things will be, they'll win by 100. And we were on a 13.5. I mean, the market agreed. This thing opened at like 11 and ended up closing at 14. I mean, that's a lot of pretty much. There was no resistance. There was pretty much no buying on Arkansas. So pretty interesting there. All right. Any other hot takes? Any other teams you want to talk about? Any futures you're thinking right now? I know we've thrown out some pretty sexy ones in the past. We've talked about Alabama. They look a hell of a lot different than when we were going in. Everybody had a hesitancy. Penn State's another one. Right. Pretty good spot. I really, really, really want to tout Penn State right now. In my mind, Ohio State can easily win this game against Oregon. And now you're looking at a Penn State. Ohio State is the more likely Big Ten championship game. And quite frankly, the way things are going, I would not be surprised if Penn State does what we think they're going to do against USC. Remember, Ohio State plays at Penn State. Don't be surprised if you see Penn State -1, slightly favored, or a pick 'em for that game. And then all of a sudden, Penn State becomes the favorite to win the Big Ten. So I think there's still some buying opportunity at Penn State. Heisman, we talked about 3 weeks ago, I think it was, for Alabama's quarterback, and I think he's the favorite right now. So yeah, Jaden Miller. So anything on your mind? Any buying spots from the futures market?
Not really. I mean, the Penn State one is one we've been kind of talking about all season. That's one that I'm definitely in on. I had Arizona as well. The loss there, to Texas Tech was kind of a blow after beating Utah, because their odds definitely dropped down after that Utah win. But the Big 12 is still wide open. The one thing, and I haven't looked at this. This is me just riffing off the cuff here. Colorado's 2-0 in a Big 12 conference where anything can happen. Is Colorado? Do they have a chance? Is there? To use our example, is there a world where Colorado can find themselves in a Big 12 championship in a conference we expect there to be so much bloodshed and no one to leave out undefeated or unscathed?
I don't think so. I'm looking up the numbers right now. Colorado 3,200 best number. This is market though is bifurcated. Oh no, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong team. Sorry. Best number is 2,500, but there's a lot of variance. You can get 2,500 plus 800 plus 900
Jesus.
and plus 1,000. So
wait, who's still at the 2,500?
Benham GM's just begging you to bet Colorado. Looks like the consensus right now is Kansas State and Utah. That actually is a good point. I'm glad you brought up the Arizona. So update on the Arizona SMU ticket. So I have potential to win 75 grand. So we have, I think it's like the total bet's like $350. It is now, I can cash out for 1.5x the cost.
Really?
Yeah. And to your point, during right after that game, I could have cashed out for 2x. And I went to bed on Saturday, was like, all right, this is interesting, because SMU now, after they beat Louisville, they're 4-1. So they're
2-0 in the conference.
They're exactly. They're at the top. Then Arizona, if they were going to beat, so SMU, yes, but then Cal was beating the hell out of Miami, which would help the ACC situation. Right. Okay. And then Arizona, they could have definitely won that game against Texas Tech. So I was like, okay, I go to bed here, I could be waking up to a very interesting situation where this ticket goes way up in value. Unfortunately, it didn't, but it's, I don't know. So I've been, I don't know, thinking about it, because I just don't think, the Big 12 is chaotic. And we called this.
Right.
It's just, I can't get behind the Colorado bet, but I can't get behind it mostly because I'm just too biased. I think that the sentiment is right though, which is like, it's just so wide open.
Yeah.
And we've said that. So
yeah,
I think it's fair. Let me just get a price on Penn State, because Penn State conference winner plus 450. Plus 500 is best number. Sorry. Plus 500. Oregon is plus 200 and Ohio State's plus 150.
Yeah, I think I'm at the double dip on that Penn State.
I'm just saying. I think that there's value there. Look, it could obviously not work out this way.
Of course,
Oregon could win, and that kind of messes things up, because you really want Oregon to lose, I think, in that situation, because so much of the probability is going to shift to Penn State. Whereas if Ohio State wins, they're so good, they're going to play all the teams, they still can end up back in the Big Ten championship game. So I don't know, just a thought there. No real Heisman. That's not true. I did have one Heisman take for you. So what if Quinn Ewers comes back, has a crazy triple R, they go on, they have a wild run through the SEC, they still have to play everybody, Georgia at home, so on and so forth. Like, the resume is going to be there. They make the playoffs. I think the votes will have to be in right around that time. So can Ewers still win the Heisman missing 2 weeks? Because they have to play everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, let's pull up their record. Let me get your thoughts, but while you do that,
Sure.
yeah, I'll pull it up while you're doing that.
Yeah, we'll look at the record. I have my thoughts. I know it's not quite as set in stone as like some of the MVP races for let's say NBA for example or the NFL where there really is that requirement to play X amount of games right before you get disqualified. I don't know if there's
Yeah.
really been a precedent for missing a few
I
weeks.
don't know. I'm gonna look into it.
Yeah, but
Okay.
go ahead.
So they play Oklahoma, Georgia,
Okay.
Vanderbilt, which that might be more and more of a big game.
Right.
Florida, Arkansas, Kentucky, Texas A&M. And the only games he didn't play was against Louisiana Monroe and Michigan State. Sorry, Mississippi State. He did play in the Michigan game, which was one of their bigger matchups. So the 2 games he could have missed, other than UTSA, which he missed half that game, are like the 2 or 3 easiest games on the schedule. So how can you tell me he's not the best player if they go undefeated?
Yeah, and again, I don't know what the precedent is for this, but I wonder how much of that is going to be. Were you the best player? Did you have the best resume week in and week out with someone else having 2 additional weeks to play? And I definitely agree with your argument that I think it's a pretty safe assumption that those are going to be 2 games that he absolutely dominates as well. But we've seen the Vanderbilts, the Kentuckys, and Arkansas, et cetera. So I'll give you this. I think that right now he's probably still my second favorite quarterback. I think it's still a Milroe's spot to lose. And then you have to throw in the dark horse. Is this going to be a time where we switch away from an offensive player? Well, half switch away from offensive player, and does Travis Hunter out of Colorado really have an opportunity if they make a Big 12 run and get to it while he's playing both sides of the ball?
Okay, they'd have to make a big. They'd have to make a Big 12 run. They'd have to go to the championship game, and they'd have to win. If that all happens, I think he could win. Our best case here for Ewers, it would be RG3 2013.
Okay.
Although no, hold on. Heisman Trophy winners have missed. No, this is the AI has failed me. I'll have to look this up. Oh wait, yeah, I'll have to look it up later. Because this is giving me NFL misses, NFL games that they missed, which obviously we don't give a shit about. All right. I just a thought here. Sure. I think they just have enough big games. He's coming back. He's gonna have health, or he should be healthy. Presumably. They're the number 1 team. They continue to kind of run through the SEC. That's pretty impressive. Yeah. All right, Steve. We got a couple more segments. Let's run into off the numbers. Pretty big. This is our third. This will be our 3rd week doing it so far. Yeah. Kevin 2-0. Seth 2-0. Steve 0-2. What's going on?
Yeah, listen, no excuses. You play the game and you own your results. Week 1 I got cute, went for over under for the SMU Florida State game because I thought picking against Florida State, kicking them while they're down was just too cliche. I will never make that mistake again. I will kick them low. When they go low, we go lower. Yeah, exactly. And then last week, I mean, that was we talk about betting the process, and again, if you're new here, how do you know you had a good bet? Even when your team loses, right? We talk about things like looking at closing line value, which there was a smidge of that did get up to 6 and then kind of got bought back down. But if you look at that game, that was a game where UNLV got off to a slow start, had the -5.5 over Syracuse, and they were winning by a touchdown and had 3 separate chances to end the game and cover on the final drive of the game. They had 2 potential interceptions that hit the defenders in their hand. They dropped them, and the 4th and 1 tackle for a loss where the guy just didn't wrap up. But again, we make no excuses here. It's a new week, and we're going to start a winning streak right now.
All right, let's do it. So you start us off then. Week 3, what is your off the numbers pick?
Yeah, listen, I just talked about how you have to have a strategy and a process and a mental model for making smart bets. Now, throw that all out the window, nerds, because I am going off purely fandom, and I'm morally and ethically responsible to make this bet. I'm taking the over 49.5 in the Red River rivalry. These are two teams, and listen, we talked about earlier, we're on Texas, and Texas is a very dominant team in this matchup. Oklahoma is definitely going to struggle, but I'll be damned if they don't find ways to put up points in this matchup every single year. I think they're contractually obligated to do it. And even when they're blowouts, like I believe it was 2 or 3 years ago when Texas won like 49-0, like Texas definitely brings in, they pull their fair share of the weight. I'm expecting more of the same. I'm taking the over in that matchup.
All right. I mean, everything's bigger in Texas, I guess, including the totals. Market, it's kind of a little bit in agreement with you. Currently 50s at Circa and Bookmaker. You can get 49.5s, kind of expensive. There's one 110, 49.5, but there's some 50s. So far so good. I think it's not crazy. I think anything can happen in that game. I don't think it's a crazy bet at all. All right, Kevin isn't here, but Kevin is on Penn State USC under 48.5, and I am on Penn State to cover 4.5 minus 110 over at DraftKings. I mean, I kind of talked about this a little bit when we did the rundown on this game, but the reality here is I think Penn State just has all the right tools to dominate on the ground. I think they're already leaning into that, and I think when they have opportunities to throw the ball, they're going to be able to capitalize on them. And I'm really concerned about USC's defense in that echo rate that's really low, but a really high points per echo. To me, this is showing teams that have been stuttering, but then once they get there and they get momentum, they're scoring. So what's stopping teams kind of piling it on week in and week out as they get into a tougher Big Ten schedule? We saw that how Minnesota had success last week, and I don't necessarily think it's going to stop here with Penn State. So my off the numbers pick, Penn State minus 4.5, minus 110, which I believe you can still get. Let's double check here.
And while you're doing that, I actually have a correction. Sorry. It's over 49, minus 108 at DraftKings is my bet. Not
okay. Well, it's even better. Yeah. So you got a little bit of CLV. Yeah, 4.5, expensive 4.5. FanDuel still. Most of the market right now is at 5 or 5.5. I to be honest, I don't think it really matters. I think you're gonna bet it there. We make this number 7. From a cover probability, if you truly want to put your professional cap back on, you're really trying to aim for some 3.5. That's the kind of cutoff number. But again, for off the numbers, give it to me, baby. I'm willing to go a little bit higher on that. So that is our off the numbers. I guess I misspoke, Steve. You're 1-1, or maybe.
No, that's just an error. I think we didn't update the chart. Listen, again, for the people there, I would never lie to you. We are all about accountability and honesty here at BTB Analytics. That's what makes us different than these damn touts out there who are just trying to scam you. All right, we're all about the truth and integrity. I am 0-2.
Yes. Okay. All good. But like you said, it's a new week, baby. Okay, here we go. Let's get into the model plays. I'm pulling them up. Do we have? I can't remember. Oh, we did put them in there. Okay, great. Okay, week 7 college football model plays. We are on Friday Night Cap. We are on Northwestern plus 11. We are on Florida plus 16.5. Texas minus 14.5. NIU plus 3 against Bowling Green. Vandy, we talked about them. We're on them this week plus 12.5. We are on Southern Miss plus 6.5, Cal plus 3.5, and Wisconsin plus 2.5. A bit of a lighter card. I think this is about the volume we're probably going to see week in and week out now. It usually tapers off around this time, especially when we get week 8 and above. There were a couple marginal plays we didn't end up betting. We did talk about potentially betting Oregon. We just couldn't get the price. And then Penn State was another one where we just couldn't get the price. So these are the games we're looking at for week 7. It's flying by. Oh, yeah. The current model record is 36-40. So we're technically at a losing point in the season, but with the volume we know we have coming, we forecast we're probably only about a third of the way from a volume standpoint. So we got another, I don't know, at least 60, maybe 80 bets coming. So, hold on tight because the volume is still yet to come. We got a lot of games to bet. All right, Steve, any last thoughts?
No, other than, this just a season, fall season, alt season, football season in general. I'm just glad it's here, and, be sure to hang on to it. You're right. Live in a moment, you all, tell your loved ones, tell your loved footballs, tell your loved teams that you care about them, because you blink and we'll be talking about CFP and then it'll be baseball season again.
For real, for real. I couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks so much for everybody for hanging out with us. As a reminder, if you don't mind, like, subscribe. It helps our channel grow tremendously. If you want to see any teams for next week, let us know in the comments. We can always add games or talk about anything specific that you're wondering. Remember, you can get all of this data for free at our website, btb-analytics.com. All the stats that we talk about are free and available. And as Steve has mentioned, if you want access to the actual model, there is a member sign-up page. If you're interested, go check that out. All right, guys, enjoy your week 7, and we will all see you next week. Take care.